stories abound of thousands of German soldiers burned alive in the English Channel. It's even claimed that Churchill has found a way to set the sea itself ablaze, striking fear into the hearts of Hitler's troops. Berlin denies everything, which only makes it worse. Behind closed doors, the Germans carry out their own test, igniting 100 tons of oil on open water. The military leaves no public record explaining why. The rumor hasn't come from nowhere. After leaving most of their guns, tanks, artillery, and ammunition behind in the evacuation of Dunkirk, the British have indeed begun considering burning oil as an alternative method of fighting off Operation Sea Lion, the impending invasion of Britain. A rumor is spreading across occupied Europe. Churchill has authorized the creation of the Petroleum Warfare Department. The department's head, Geoffrey Lloyd, has set out its vision, quote, "Flame all across Britain, ringing the coasts, spurting from the hedges and rolling down the hills. We will burn the invader back into the sea." So far, the PWD has focused on defending British shores. Walls of flame at the beaches, oil ignited on the water as the invasion fleet attempts to cross. But the open channel trials are not going well. The fuel disperses on the waves, the wind blows it apart, and the quantities required to cover any meaningful stretch of water are enormous. Britain has the fuel. It cannot reliably set the sea on fire. One experiment, however, points in a different direction. Off the Essex coast, a small Thames tanker called Suffolk is packed with 50 tons of petroleum and detonated. The blast is enormous. The fire is intense. As a defensive weapon, it's no use. The fuel still disperses in open water. But Suffolk has demonstrated something else. An oil-laden vessel, properly prepared, can be exploded with devastating effect. By the early summer of 1940, an idea is circulating through the Petroleum Warfare Department, the Admiralty, and Churchill's own war rooms. If Britain cannot ignite the channel as the Germans cross it, then perhaps a fleet of ships can. It's certainly a bold plan. Take a handful of oil tankers, fill them with thousands of tons of flammable fuel and explosives, sail them across the channel at night, and drive them directly into the mouths of the French ports, where Hitler has been amassing his barges for Operation Sea Lion. The burning fuel, drawn into the harbor by the rising tide, would turn the entire anchorage into an inferno. The invasion fleet would be destroyed before it ever set sail. Churchill is fascinated. He's been looking for a way to take the fight to the Germans, and here it is, an idea whose historical resonance is impossible for him to miss. More than 3 centuries earlier, England had also faced the threat of invasion, this time from its greatest rival, Spain. In 1587, English privateer Sir Francis Drake preemptively struck the Spanish fleet at the port of Cadiz, burning ships and supplies before it could even sail. He famously boasted that he had, quote, "singed the King of Spain's beard." A year later, the Spain's restored fleet gathered on the coast of northern France for a fresh invasion attempt known as the Spanish Armada. Drake hit them with burning fire ships, scattering the enemy vessels in panic. To Churchill, this new proposal for stopping Operation Sea Lion carries the spirit of both moments. He intends to, in his own words, quote, "singe Mr. Hitler's mustache." The plan is given a name, Operation Lucid. Now, Churchill needs the right man to lead it, and as it happens, he knows exactly who to ask. Captain Augustus Ager is already a legend. In 1919, he'd taken a 4.5-ton motorboat into Bolshevik waters under cover of darkness and torpedoed and sunk the Russian cruiser Oleg with a single shot. The Victoria Cross awarded to him was presented in mysterious circumstances, because the operation officially never happened. The man who once described himself as, quote, "highly strung and imaginative," throws himself into the planning of Lucid. Working with the Petroleum Warfare Department, Ager develops a custom fuel mixture. Half heavy fuel oil, a quarter diesel, a quarter gasoline. Morgan Giles recruited as Eger's staff officer for his explosives expertise, would later describe what they were building. Quote, "If ignited on the sea, this stuff would run round on the surface like quicksilver, with huge flames that would burn up anything or anybody that it reached." 3 tankers are selected to deliver this potent blend: War Nawab, War Nizam, and Oakfield. They've been rusting at anchor for years, their hulls leaking, their engines barely functional. But they are the only vessels Britain can spare, and with the threat of invasion looming ever larger, they will have to do. Determined to keep the operation secret, a rumor is deliberately spread among the dockyards, where the tankers are being readied for the operation. They are to be used as block ships, vessels used as floating obstacles to prevent the enemy from entering a port. Nonetheless, it doesn't take long for the truth to spread. Morgan Giles would later recall, quote, "The joke was that if you went into a pub in Chatham, the barmaid would say, 'Are you in the fire ships, dearie?' While the sailors settle into life on these floating powder kegs, above them, the Blitz has raged nightly since September 7th. Chief Petty Officer Ronald Apps, one of the crew, would later recall the tense atmosphere on board. Quote, "When you're sitting on all this explosive material, and the Germans are coming over and dropping bombs, it's not very, shall I say, sleep-inspiring." Apps was also one of the select group of men who would face the most dangerous part of the entire mission: riding the tankers in on the night. He explained the procedure for getting off the fire ships in time. Quote, "We practiced setting the controls and evacuating the ship with 2 speedboats alongside us, which had been commandeered from Southend. At the blowing of a whistle, we had to rush down, getting the boats, and we were away." Whether the men were expected to make it, Morgan Giles gave the honest answer: they would escape, quote, "if possible." For Lucid to work, almost everything had to go right. The engines had to hold. The wind had to be exactly right. The escorts had to avoid mines, guns, and patrol craft. The tide had to carry the burning fuel into the anchorage, rather than out to sea. It was a precarious chain of conditions. On the night of September 26th, War Nizam and Oakfield slip out of Sheerness for Calais. War Nawab leaves Portsmouth for Boulogne. Eger commands from the destroyer HMS Campbell. Operation Lucid is underway. But soon things go wrong. Oakfield breaks down first. Then War Nizam loses her boilers. War Nawab gets within 7 miles of Boulogne, close enough that the attack no longer feels theoretical. But with 2 of the 3 tankers gone, striking one harbor means alerting every other German port up the coast. Eger turns back. By now, the Blitz is tightening its grip. German bombers have been hitting Britain every single night. Not just London, but a growing list of cities, ports, and factories around the country. The pressure to make Lucid work has never been greater. On October 3rd, Eger tries again. This time, it's the weather. A southerly gale rises before the fire ships can even clear port. The worst possible conditions, since the burning oil would be pushed away from the harbor entrances rather than into them. The mission is postponed 24 hours, but by the evening of the 4th, the wind has still not broken. The operation is called off again. But Eger refuses to give up. 3 nights later, he transfers his flag to a different destroyer, HMS Hambledon, and tries once more. The conditions are finally right. The channel is calm. For the first time since the operation began, it genuinely feels as though Lucid might reach France. Then the night explodes. Hambledon hits an acoustic mine. The blast tears her stern clean off. The convoy shudders to a halt. Eger sends an immediate signal. Operation Lucid cancelled. The stricken Hambledon is taken under tow. The explosion has drawn the attention of German coastal batteries on the French shore. As the crippled destroyer limps home, shells fly across the water toward her. Not a single one hits. Lucid has now been stopped by almost everything it needed to overcome. Rotten ships, bad weather, and the mines that were waiting in waters the Royal Navy had been told were clear. 4 attempts, 4 failures. But Ager remains determined to make Lucid a reality. A 5th attempt is planned for November. However, before he can proceed, a message comes down through the chain of command. The conclusion has been reached that the risk of a German invasion has subsided. Operation Lucid is called off again, but this time it's for good. It will later emerge that Hitler had given his order to indefinitely postpone Operation Sea Lion on September 17th, 9 days before the fireship's first attempt at crossing the channel. Every mission in which their crews anxiously transported thousands of tons of explosives across the English Channel, never knowing when they might fall prey to a Luftwaffe bomber overhead or a naval mine below, had been aimed at an invasion already on indefinite hold and soon to be abandoned altogether. But bitter irony aside, one question lingers. Was Operation Lucid a desperate, ill-thought-out scheme that was always doomed to failure? Morgan Giles himself, looking back years later, would refer to it as, quote, a completely harebrained idea. Yet the evidence suggests otherwise. In March 1942, Churchill backed an operation with striking similarities to Lucid. Operation Chariot drove the old destroyer HMS Campbelltown, packed with explosives, into the dock gates of Saint-Nazaire on the French coast. The delayed action charges destroyed the dry dock so completely that it was denied to the German battleship Tirpitz for the rest of the war. The concept Lucid had been built around, an explosive ship driven into a defended French port, worked brilliantly. The difference was not the idea, it was the ships. Chariot had a destroyer. Lucid had rust-bucket tankers that could barely cross the channel. But in the end, perhaps it didn't matter. The rumor that had spread through occupied Europe all summer, that the Royal Navy could set the sea itself on fire, that German soldiers had already burned alive in the channel, had outlasted the operation built around it. It reached neutral capitals. It was repeated by captured German pilots. It even sent the German military to its own beaches to test whether the British weapon was real. The fire ships never reached their targets, but the threat of British fire had already crossed the channel without them, and may even have played a part in the decision to delay Operation Sea Lion. Sometimes fear can be the most powerful weapon of all.